We're coming in hot with inspiring guests, witty banter, and colorful commentary for today's veterans and military community. This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
They call me crazy cause I'm facing all my giants. They try to scare me into thinking I can fight it. They tell me I should never even think of trying. But that's just me, I'm gonna live out in defiance.
Oh, alphas. I'm so in love with that guy that I see in the mirror every day. I'm just brushing my teeth going, God, people get to look at you. But it gets to be old, and I want some love in my life, and I want to join the auxiliary. So if there is a veteran lady out there who wants to also look and admire this face as one of their favorite things on earth, then I invite you to reach out to me today. Someone who is in love in the military, or as a military spouse, is Ashley Goodenmuth. You know her from Tango Alpha Lima, but probably you know her from every social media site that exists because she dominates them all. When you're not dominating all this, when you're not dominating all the socials and loving on your fans, how is Valentine's Day as a military spouse?
Valentine's Day doesn't exist for military spouse, Jeff. That's what you'll learn when you find your new love. I have had lots of times where my husband's just been away, he's been deployed while over Valentine's Day. He's just had like a conference that came up, which sounds super shady. Like, sorry, got to go to this conference, this one-day conference. It's just on Valentine's Day. I think he's got a secret family, but I'm not going to worry about it because, retirement soon. What kind of lady are you looking for? What are your needs?
Should I accelerate my cancellation?
Yeah.
I'm a man of simple needs. I require two things. Above average looks. She doesn't have to be above average looks.
Okay.
And below average self-esteem. So she doesn't know about the above average looks. I think that's the perfect match for me.
Do you need her to do anything weird, like spray Lotrimin on your feet or anything like that, or just...
Oh my God, if she even looks at my feet, we're getting divorced. I hate feet. I don't like people who
She can't
like
look
feet.
at your feet. She
No.
cannot have feet, and she can't look at your feet.
Oh my goodness, feet. I'm annoyed that we have a measurement that uses the word feet.
Oh, maybe you could go metric.
No, I'm an American. There's
Are
one
you?
thing I love on Valentine's Day.
It's America. That's who we're all in love with this Valentine's Day. America. What are you getting America for Valentine's Day, Jeff? I'm taking her out for a sweet steak dinner at Applebee's.
And then you'll eat it for America?
I'll eat it for America. Yeah, I'll get the baked potato, and I'll take a little bit of it home, because that's what she likes. She likes just a little bit of leftovers. Yeah.
I'm actually touched right now.
Don't do that on the air.
The prospect of love, it's out there, I'm sure. Maybe. I mean, I know love exists. I've seen it.
Love exists. For God's sakes, Jeff, though, your standards are too high. You need to find somebody that will put up with you for a few months, and then it's just too much of a pain to leave. That's all love is. That's
all love is. Love is that wonderful convenience that you split the bills with, and you live a better life because you're combining income. That's
my husband has been in the military for a long time and is good with money. I am a stand-up comedian that spends a lot of time in dumpsters and spends most of her money on like pop rocks. So I am not a good financial investment. In case anyone out there is looking to marry me, my husband's 20 years older. At some point, it might happen again. But you gotta really be sure, ask those hard questions. What are your values? How do you want to spend an evening? These are the things that you should be talking to about.
What's your favorite pop rock flavor?
Green.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pop rocks are to the military spouse what crayons are to the Marines.
No, they love them so much. Balanced breakfast.
There you go. All right. As much as we love our banter because we're adorable, we do have a show to do, and Holly's going to get twitchy real soon if we don't move on. That's super producer Holly, who America loves. All right, so this first one you're going to talk about our love of America a little bit, I think, or our love of veterans.
Is that like the hoorah? It's love of veterans. Veterans just go. All right, let's talk about this. The Legion lines out priorities for the 118th Congress. By the American Legion. This article, funding, oversight, and fulfillment of the landmark Hiring Our Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxics, or the PACT Act, and heightened attention and access to mental health care for veterans are among the legislative priorities the American Legion is presenting to Congress during the Washington Conference, February 26th through March 1st. The PACT Act, signed into law last August, accomplished one of the American Legion's highest agenda items for 2022. The measure expands VA healthcare services and disability benefits eligibility for more than 3.5 million veterans exposed to burn pits in the global war on terrorism, along with others with healthcare conditions attributable to toxic contamination during military service. Properly funded implementation and oversight are the next steps, the Legion argues. Also on the organization's radar for the first session of the 118th Congress are protection from predatory exploitation of veterans seeking help applying for VA benefits or Camp Lejeune Justice Act lawsuit damages, a more level playing field for National Guard veterans using their GI Bill benefits, support for Afghan allies of the U.S. military, and an update U.S. flag code are also included in this year's message to lawmakers. American Legion National Commander Vincent, can't even say Vincent. American Legion National Commander Vincent J. Jim Triola will deliver the Legion's testimony before a joint session of the House and Senate Committees on Veterans Affairs on March 1st. I'll be watching. I think that's awesome. Another part of this article, we talk about military quality of life. That's something that's super important to me. And I know it's all important to a lot of military families. The U.S. military's greatest resources are individual service members and their families. Without highly qualified and committed men and women, even the most sophisticated weaponry will not provide the deterrent necessary to defend our nations. Factors that contribute to quality of life include proper compensation, career development, appropriate housing, quality health care, reasonably priced commissaries, and access to affordable daycare. Yes, the American Legion urges Congress to pass legislation that would increase access to childcare for military families, increase appropriations to address matters involving service member food insecurity, and increase funding to renovate military housing. All of those things. Nailed it, Legion. Again and again, pummel this to death. I love it.
Woo! That was violent.
Me and my
I got to start at the top first in my reaction. Okay. We're so young as a country. We have people that have lived longer than we've had numbers of Congress, right? Has anybody lived to 118?
I think people, the oldest woman, I think, was like 128.
Yeah, we've had people on this earth. Our country is younger than some humans have lived. That's amazing to me. Anyway, I love that Jim Triola, his first name is Vincent. No, he never goes by Vincent. I'm surprised he allows you guys to put his name there like that. He's a good guy. He watches or listens to this show. I know that because when I met him, he asked me how my health was because he'd been following on the program. So that's awesome, and I'm excited for him to talk to the House and Senate on this because he's got a nice voice. It's got that New York thing that people that blue collar New York kind of thing. That he's like,
hey, we need quality of life.
Yeah, he's like, you better listen to me. I'm America. I'm just speaking for America. I am. Look. This is America. So, and to your thing, we've talked about it before, and I know that it's not just a passion of yours, and you're not just out there saying this is a problem, this is a problem. You're actively trying to be part of the solution, which I think is great. Which that's why I voted for you in that contest. Unfortunately, this will air too late.
Oh, the Military Spouse of the Year Awards. Well, it all culminates in May. So hopefully
they can vote again
with your vote. Yes, they will be able to vote again in May. Yeah. I know.
You could be the Military Spouse of the Year.
I know, right? How will my husband ever win an argument again? He hasn't yet, but how will he win one in the future if I'm just like, he's like, Ashley, I don't really like what you did there. And I'm like, why don't you go find a better spouse?
No, you point to your
Just-
your cert. Yeah, just ask the cert what kind
Look at-
of wife I am.
That's
So
right.
I do love that that's a priority. I do love some of, if you go through the article again, if you read the whole article out there, alphas, you'll see there's things that go along with things in the Legion culture, the Be the One culture. They're really focusing in on veteran suicide in a real way, not just talking about it, talking about investing in alternative treatments. They're talking about investing in the network that's available for people. And you can read all of that later if you go to legion.org/legislative. There's more info there. That wasn't from me. I'm not that smart. That was from super producer Holly. She's on top of all of these things and throws it down on my shoulders, and I have to.
Like Atlas.
I'm glad you're
Go
here, actually.
forward. Me too.
I'm glad you're here. 118th Congress. We're watching. Get it right.
That's right.
You know what? We're gonna go away from Congress for a second. And I appreciate you have a very pleasant reading voice. I don't know if you moonlight. Wait, you can't moonlight from comedy because it's always at night. If you have a daylight job, you should do some books on tape.
I do. I am a trained voiceover actor.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you need a voiceover actor, there's Ashley Gutermuth right
Ashley.
there.
There you go. Thank you.
All right.
You can hear my reel on ashleygutermuth.com.
Ooh. Hello. That's going to be my ringtone, is whatever's on your reel.
You should do it.
That would be interesting. All right. We're going to move on to other topics. Today, we'll be joined by Jeffrey Brodeur, who has experience developing chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, or if you just want to say CBRN, strategy, plans, and training programs. Jeffrey is an internationally recognized CBRN expert and has led survey teams in combat zones to support Department of State programs. We're going to be right back with Jeffrey Brodeur right after the break.
By pulling out your cell phone and simply typing www.legion.org/action, you have at your fingertips our legislative priorities. With one press of a button, you can let your congressmen and your senators know what the American Legion wants to pass. And you can do it every single day. The power is in our hands. You just have to take the opportunity to use it.
All right, Alphas, we are back, and things are going to get chemically up in here. We have an expert in things that I can't pronounce, so we're going to let Jeffrey Brodeur do that today. And welcome to the Tango Alpha Lima experience, sir.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here. Thanks for
inviting me. What is that
me.
you're wearing?
Well, the first time on this show, and so I previewed like a good ranger. I had to do a reconnaissance of the objective. I saw that poncho liner in the background and decided my sport coat would not cut it. So I just had to go a little tactical on you. I'm a little old ranger, but I'm still a ranger.
All right. I love it when people represent.
There you go.
There you go. All right, sir. You see Ashley up there. She's the mean
Hi,
one.
Ashley.
She's the mean one. I will come back with the lighter fare, but we're going to start out with the tough journalist, Ashley Gutermuth.
Tough journalist, Ashley Gutermuth. All right, Jeff, please. What is I can't even pronounce it. Presumptive identification, and why is it important?
So I deal in the world of chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear warfare. Some people call it weapons of mass destruction. I'm happy to find a captive audience to talk about, because you're very rare, trust me. In the case of chemical warfare or chemistry, when I send that sample to a laboratory and all the scientists and PhDs do their tests, they can come back and they certify on a piece of paper and they say, this is what it is. It is sarin nerve agent, right? any tests done before that laboratory and the certified and credentialed skill sets and laboratories say that it's seronerve agent is some technician like me that's out in the world with a piece of equipment, and the science that I have is so exact. I am 99.9% sure it's presumptive. It is what it is. It is seronerve agent. That's called presumptive identification. So presumptive is, I can't certify it. It's not admissible in a case of law and in a court of law, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. That's important because it informs my tactical decisions on how I do my survey. That's different from detection, which tells me it's nerve agent. I don't know what kind it is, but it is nerve agent. And there are a variety of nerve agents out there. And chemical warfare agents come in a huge variety. Remember, chemical warfare agents were born out of military action, World War I, right? So we have choking agents, we have blood agents, we have persistent agents. Think of the consistency of oatmeal that sticks on the ground and doesn't go away for sometimes a really long time. And we have non-persistent agents that are generally a respiratory hazard and can dissipate in minutes. All of those have a very specific task and purpose for the battleground. Presumptive ID is important for somebody like me. That allows me to go up onto a facility or to an objective, and if I test the sample and I know that it's seronerve agent, that informs how I adjust my personal protective equipment, how I decontaminate it, how I advise on medical therapy and casualty management. When I do site exploitation, if I come across precursors, and there are two precursors there, and I know, and there's a third one that I need to look for. Presumptive ID or Raman spectroscopy gives me the information that I need in order to do my job. So flip back 10 or 15 years ago, I would have had to put something in a bottle, put it in an envelope, send it to a field lab that normally has a backlog of about 90 days. Then I go back to the facility. Well, chemistry is chemistry. Some of it gets dirty, some of it evaporates. It's just not there. I said something that made your eyes kind of go like this: Raman spectroscopy. So here's what Raman spectroscopy is. Raman spectroscopy, think of it this way. We have a molecule which is 3 or more elements, and they're bound together by sharing an electron. So that's a covalent bond. 2 elements normally are like a positive and negative charge, and that's what keeps them together. The difference is that Raman spectroscopy takes a passive laser and it energizes that molecule, which causes it to vibrate and rotate. That's the fingerprint. It captures the fingerprint and compares it to a digital library and tells me exactly what it is. Presumptive ID, 99.1%. If I have an ionic bond, the energy of the passive laser will cause those elements to break away. It's just enough because they're not held together very strongly. They break away and then they're just elements, right? So everything that I'm looking for, chemical warfare agents, they're precursors. Homemade explosive, they're precursors. Illegal substances, pharmaceuticals, all of those are precursors. Why are pharmaceuticals important for my business? 2012 in October, in a Moscow theater, it's documented the Russians introduced fentanyl into a hostage rescue crisis. They didn't get the chemistry just right. Everybody ended up dying. Unfortunately, the doctors didn't know what they were exposed to. But if I go to a hospital and I go to the pharmacy, I go to that back wall that's for the anesthesiologist, everything in there incapacitates, just like what a chemical warfare agent was designed to do. That's a dual purpose agent. I can now employ that pharmaceutical in a novel way.
Wow. I wonder if I can get college credit. That was a lot of information that it's out of my wheelhouse, so it's all new to me. I'm still processing some of it. If the backpack part leads me to wonder tactically if somebody there who doesn't have your level of expertise has it been made accessible for ground troops?
Oh, absolutely, and it is. It's available. So it's being fielded our device is being fielded. The Rigaku analytical device is being fielded in the dismounted reconnaissance sets, kits, and outfits.
And is there a lot of training that is involved in this, or could these things be deployed pretty quickly?
Honestly, the beauty of the science and the engineering that went into this device is you literally will press a button 3 times, right?
Wow.
It's basically arm the laser, interrogate the sample, and a report is generated in 45 seconds. 45 seconds. Now, here's a beauty about Raman spectroscopy, and that is that my sample can be in an enclosed vial. Don't open the lid. You don't need to, right? Because that passive laser goes through transparent, translucent containers. I'm not measuring the vapor pressure or the boiling point or anything like that. I'm not doing traditional chemistry. I'm introducing a passive laser, and the instrument is reading the response to that passive laser. Right. So that's the other nice thing about the Rigaku analytical device, is that I don't have to expose myself to the threat. Right. I can keep the container closed if I need to. When I respond to an incident, it's always mass chaos. So nothing is ever sealed. There's always a respiratory hazard out there. So sometimes I will take a cotton swab and I'll swipe the sample, put it in a double Ziploc bag, and bring it back to the Toyota Land Cruiser where my device is, and I will do the testing there. I said presumptive ID in a backpack. Here's why that's important. I retired from the Army, 30 years in the CBRN branch, the Chemical Corps of the U.S. Army. When I retired in 2014, the only way for me to gain presumptive identification was in the back of a $1.2 million combat vehicle that had a laboratory in the back end, but it was cool. It shot back. But it was we took a laboratory piece of equipment and we painted it green and we shoved it in the back of a Stryker vehicle. $1.2 million a copy. Right. And that thing weighed a lot. Now I've got something that is handheld and it literally goes in my backpack with my Lickies and Chewies and my Gatorade and everything else. And so it's available it's amazing, right? So I can bring my instrument to the objective, whether that's on the 15th floor or a hole in the ground. I don't have to drive a combat vehicle in there. It's me. It's not a crew of 4 people. So the cost efficiencies are incredible, and I receive the same level of presumptive ID.
It's crazy.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So you retired in 2014, but in 2018 is when you completed your toxic chemical survey project in Iraq. How did you end up back there?
I had a very, very good friend in December of 2017 who called me up as I'm walking through a grocery store. And he said, "Jeff, how'd you like to go back to Iraq, this time as a civilian, not a soldier?" I said, "I thought you'd never ask. When am I leaving?" At the time, I don't know if you remember, but in October 2017, the Australian government detained an ISIS member on an aircraft who tried to employ an improvised chemical device on an airplane while in flight.
Wow.
So you have contained space, only so many oxygen molecules. It could have been disastrous. We found the same sort of device in Iraq, and a number of private industry companies had contracts with the United Nations to demine all of the minefields that were left behind from 20, 30 years worth of combat against a number of opposing forces. This time it was with ISIS. And so the explosive ordnance disposal technicians did not have the skill set to recognize, mitigate, or respond to a chemical threat. So they sent me out west to receive my classified briefing. I went back to Iraq, and I was able to provide some techniques to EOD technicians on how to, first of all, understand what they're looking for, how to mitigate it if they ever come across it. After 2 weeks, I called back and I said, my job is done. They said, Jeff, we still have more money. Go find stuff. I said, what does stuff mean? They go, well, what you do best, CBRN. I said, okay. I said, do you have any leads? Do you have a target list? They said, no. So, having been to Iraq a couple of times, I called up my friends at Babylon University. Academics are the most amazing human beings in the world. They don't necessarily lie on a party side. They're not loyal to necessarily an ideology. They just love their country. Almost all of them with terminal degrees, PhDs or doctor of management or something, educated in Western Europe or the United States or both. So they knew what right looked like, and they were trying to get their country back on track. And I'm out trying to find the stuff. And so my good friend said, absolutely. We sat down at a hotel. I told him what I needed to do. He said, you've got an interview tomorrow at 2:00 up in Mosul, which is in northern Iraq. And so I spent 3 tours, almost exclusively focused in the Mosul area, and a little bit far west as a private citizen in a private contract. And so I had my common sense and my experience as a soldier to sort of guide where I went and where I didn't go. Bottom line is, what I think I discovered was that in the pursuit of improvised explosive devices, ISIS went through Mosul University. And when I say the term Mosul University, think of it as just like me saying the University of Texas system. It is not a university. It's an overarching term for about 16 universities. You have the undergrad, the nursing school, the medical school, the pharmacy school, the vets, 16 of them, right? All different disciplines, 210 chemistry laboratories, all of them ransacked because ISIS was harvesting chemicals in the pursuit of homemade explosives and improvised explosive devices. And so what they didn't use in the chemistry lab, they just trashed the place, and it was a mess. And so it was one place where I relearned a lesson. I didn't relearn, I remembered a lesson. Those are the right terms. I remembered when you do a toxic chemical survey and you see a puddle on the floor, never assume it's water.
Don't lick it. Nope.
No, it'll burn the souls right off, right? And so it's probably an acid, a strong base, something flammable. You don't assume it's water unless you test it and that it's water. So 210 chemistry laboratories, a central chemical storage facility, co-ops with fertilizer, all of those completely ransacked. And it was my impression, my observation, that ISIS didn't want anybody using that facility afterwards. So they just trashed it. They just poured stuff. They broke bottles. They threw them outside. They set stuff on fire and just kind of destroyed it for anybody else to kind of follow up and go in and use. And then what they traditionally would do is ISIS would occupy a residential neighborhood. And I went up and we did a survey on one. So a residential neighborhood where they don't have side yards. We would call them townhomes, right? So they're side to side. Each one of the townhomes share a side. And they're 2 stories. And so house number 1 as an example would be station number 1 of putting together the IED. House number 5 would be the final step. And they would blow the side out of the house, so they didn't have to go out the front door, and in the other front door, they could just walk through the hole, and they did all of the assembly in the kitchen, okay? That's where you do chemistry, is in the kitchen. It's got the counter space, it's got your plumbing, it's got everything that you need. And then station number 5, they put a fuse through it in the back of the truck, and they made for distribution across the country. So at the end of my last tour, our mission matured to the point where we would respond when the Iraqi army displaced ISIS. We would go to the home or to the facility. We do a toxic chem survey before the family made supper, because they'd been displaced for 3, sometimes 4 years. They were excited to go back home. The first thing they wanted to do was break bread, and then they'll clean up the mess that is inside there. So it was kind of our job to make sure that there wasn't an invisible threat there, right? And so the remediation in that sort of context, when you just have residual, is clean it up, wipe it up, and then begin cooking supper. So that's kind of what I did. The beauty about having presumptive ID is that we were able to know within 45 seconds after testing the sample exactly what the chemistry was that we were working with.
So interesting. That's observation, then a question. It's interesting to me that you got that initial phone call in the grocery store, and many people would say we need that laser in the grocery store for the things they're selling us to eat, that we could probably save ourselves from eating a bunch of chemicals. There's been a lot about toxic exposure in legislation that the Legion was really supportive of, the PACT Act, the toxic exposure thing. Is there anything now to mandate putting and fund, obviously, the things that you're talking about, so that we don't have, I mean, we're looking at a lot of people that are going to get sick in the next 10 to 20 years from toxic exposure. Are these things that you're talking about that can warn us about that? Are they being mandated?
So the technology that I'm talking about applies to liquids, solids, and powders. In the case of, I think you're referring to burn pits. I mean, that's a respiratory hazard.
Okay.
And many of those respiratory hazards are actually solids kind of floating through the air, right? And then we breathe that in, and then it does crazy stuff to our system. Here's the challenge. I believe in your cause, and I pat you on the back for the cause, but here's the challenge with the way I see it. The desert of Iraq, it is a very, very dirty place to live. Okay. Remember, we took almost all of our gunshot wounds and we sent that casualty to Germany, because we had so many drug-resistant bacteria just in nature, because the Iraqis were able to self-medicate. You can buy anything at the pharmacy in Iraq. Anything. I had security while I was a civilian. They asked me, Jeff, do you want to carry a weapon? I said, I'm not a soldier. If I hit somebody with a bullet, I'm going to jail in Iraq, and I don't have a lawyer, and I'm not into that. I mean, somebody needs to protect me. And now if the bodyguard goes down, I'm happy to pick up the weapon and continue the fight, but I'm not shooting the first round. There's no way. But all of them were hulking human beings, sculptured with muscle, and most of them, did their weekly run to get steroids at the pharmacies. You can get just about anything you want at the pharmacy. I'm telling you. Yeah. So they would do their workout, and when they were resting in between sets, they'd smoke a cigarette, and then I'm going, how are you doing this? I mean, they're like, oh
wow, they're all juiced.
I've got juice. Anyway, so my only point is, the desert is a very dirty place. There's anthrax that's naturally occurring because of the livestock that roam it. There's bacteria that's drug resistant. If you took a sample of what's in the desert and just became situationally aware of what we're exposed to, Disclude the burn pits, okay? Just everything that is natural that is there. And say, you're going to go fight, you're going to live there, and you're going to breathe all this stuff in after all the vaccines that we take to protect you before you go there. And then you're going to come back. People are going to get sick. When you take anywhere between a million and however many million of soldiers, sailor, airmen, Marines that rotated in and out of Iraqi freedom over the number of years, people have pre-existing health conditions they don't know about. People are vulnerable. The numbers just challenge us. There's so much that is in that area of the world that we are never exposed to as Americans because we live in a good place. Our food is safe, our water is safe, and generally the things that we work with are very clean and very safe. And that's the environment that my body grew up in. And then we decide we're going to deploy and put it into a polluted area like that. People are going to get sick. I mean, I was part of the Desert Storm Respiratory Test Syndrome program, where I breathed in, the effluent from burning oil fields for months and months and months at a time. Your nose plug, it collects all of that residue up and you're blowing snot boogers, oil boogers, for 6 months afterwards, just because your body's trying to purge all of the contaminants out of you. So my only point is there's a lot to worry about when you operate in that area of the world, and burn pits is just one of them. So I wouldn't necessarily get focused on just one cause. It's probably a number or a combination of issues that has caused our service members to get sick.
I think the PACT Act was pretty comprehensive in toxic exposure. It's just the headline is burn pits and
remember, when we went into Afghanistan, Uzbekistan in its history was an open air chemical weapons test facility for the Russians. So it's not like that stuff completely goes away, right? And we deployed right into it because we needed a lily pad to go into Afghanistan. But my only point is, when you go into other places of the world, sometimes it's polluted.
Gotcha.
There's definitely a lot going on. It's Jiminy Crickets. So when you went and did all this in Iraq, now, did you go in mop gear? Were you afraid to touch things? Like you're specifically going to seek out these chemicals, biological, radiological, nuclear weapons, or at least particulates.
So that's like asking an infantry person who goes to basic AIT Ranger school, trains for 5 years, and says, "I'm going to force you to go deploy." It's game day for us. That's what we train to do. We're not pretending to do it anymore, right? We're not fairy dusting anything, not simulating anything. No, I spent 30 years as a CBRN gag warrior, and I had another opportunity to actually do it. In fact, I would submit to you that the team that I was on is one of the few teams in the world that went in a combat or post-combat environment and conducted what is traditionally a military task, right? Because the instruments for chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear warfare were either in the laboratory or Department of Defense had a monopoly on it. But because we have companies like Rigaku and Raman spectroscopy that fits in my backpack, I'm able now to issue that to train civilians to augment what military forces need. And what we were trying to do is give them a non-kinetic threat overlay of the battlefield that they were not interested in, because it wasn't part of the maneuver counter maneuver fight, right? It was everything around them. So they knew exactly what I knew. If you have to go fight in Mosul, it's 210 chemistry laboratories, right? Don't step in the puddle.
Don't step in the puddle.
Don't step in the puddle. But so, now we're able to do that. There are a number of people in the world that read about chemical warfare agents. They train, but they've never gone into a combat environment and actually faced it. So no, to answer your question, I was enthusiastic. I was sort of in a pleasant state of paranoia because I was happy to do, but I knew what the threat was. And I'd sort of, I read and practiced and trained. And now I had this device that I was able to do what a field lab could do. And now I could make split-second decisions on what I needed to do. I'll tell you, I did my surveys a little bit differently, and I don't recommend that anybody does this, but I did it and it served me well. What I learned as a civilian doing toxic chemical survey is my number one sensor is the six inches between my ears. It's everything that I learned, everything that I trained. It's thinking about what I'm doing and not being constrained with a mask or constrained respiratory breathing or having gloves on or anything like that. My second best sensor was my nose. Remember, chemical warfare agents were designed to incapacitate. They weren't designed to kill. So what I did was I planted an engineer flag, which is a small little flag, maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches by, sometimes they're triangles, most of the time they're rectangles. And I placed that near the objective that I was doing. As an example, we at Mosul Airport, we had 80 demining experts at the cost of about $250,000 a day going through and identifying and removing IEDs that were seeded by ISIS. So think of an international airport, unusable because there's so many IEDs. There's this concerted effort to clean it up, build it up, and get it up and operating again. They came across an unexploded improvised rocket that was buried 3 feet into the ground. And when the demining expert went up to it, it had a black oily substance, kind of watery, that they could see. That's an indicator for mustard. And they stopped everything. They backed off, and we did, end of day report. And I said, hey, my name is Jeff. That's what I do. Let's go out tomorrow morning. So I planted that engineer. Oh yeah, game on. So I planted the flag. I love it. I planted the flag. So I always knew where upwind is. So I approached the target from upwind. So if there's a vapor hazard, it's going downwind, right? Yep. I came up from upwind, and I could smell something that was not a chemical warfare agent. Didn't smell like new mown hay. It didn't smell like freshly cut grass. It didn't smell like anything that was out of the ordinary that should be in the desert. And here's a great example of the utility of this device. This rocket was buried no less than 3 feet into the ground. I took a wooden dowel and I dipped it into the hole to get my sample. So it got the dowel wet, right? I didn't have to take my device and drop it in there and then turn the laser on or anything. I took a sample on the wooden dowel. I wiped it off a 1-inch cotton swab that I raided from the medic's backpack. I double bagged it in Ziploc, and then I brought it back to the car, and it was ammonium nitrate. It was an explosive, right? And so 80 people were hovering over Jeff. And all of these 80 people, the most brave, gun-ho, barrel-chested, beady-eyed warriors I've ever worked with. When it comes to chemical warfare agents, they all getting back at me.
I mean, look at what they don't understand. What you don't understand.
They don't get it. And so I ran it. I ran the test, 45 seconds. I said, gentlemen, it's not mustard. They're like, what is it? I said, ammonium nitrate. And they were like, yeah. So game back on. They were able to take that $250,000 contract every day and put it back into motion, not lose money, not lose time. I had a gentleman came up to me and told me, he said, I know you would take offense to it, so I'm not going to do it, but I had horrible dreams about body parts coming out of my forehead last night. And I want to kiss you right now, but I'm not going to. Thank you very much. And they all went back to work. So that's an example of the device and how we used it. Another story, we did come across an improvised mortar device, a mortar round at that same facility. So think of, it looked like it was 3D modeled, the mortar body, because it was plastic. And, most mortar rounds, they'll have a head, a body assembly, and then sort of the back end of it where the firing pin is, and you launch it and it projects it and then it blows up. Well, this is not a smart munition, but it was the design was break up on impact. Well, it didn't break up on impact, and it was just kind of laying there. So that was the utility. We were able to put a $250,000 contract a day back into play because in 45 seconds I had a report. Now, here's a beautiful thing about the device that Rigaku has devised. Not only does it give me the report, it gives me what we call spectra. Spectra, think of your EKG. You've got the squiggly lines on a piece of paper, they go from left to right. And normally it's your heart rate and some other things. Only this is, you have a number of lines, and they're detailing the response of that molecule to the passive laser. So I'm able to take that digital spectra. If I don't have in my digital library, I'm able to send that to reach back to somebody in a laboratory with a larger library than 12 or 15,000, and then they can presumptive ID it for me, and it's that quick. So at the end of the day, if you have spectra and you're able to push that back to reach back, you really don't have any unknowns. You just have something that is not in your library at the moment.
All right.
Both of you look like you're taking notes. You're either looking at your.
I am. I looked up
Okay.
Rigaku, and I was like, it's based in Massachusetts, and I was like, all right, how much does this thing cost?
We have to.
Do I need one?
We have to.
We have to
kind of keep up.
Yeah. So the other thing is, because it does, I call it. It doesn't just do chemical warfare agents. It does chemistry. Right. So I can do the same thing with homemade explosives. That's what I was doing at the Mosul University. Right? We were identifying exactly what they were looking for, what they took, what they left behind, kind of the mess. The same thing is good for pharmacology. So because a pill laced with fentanyl is a solid powder or a liquid, I'm able to approach the same approach it the same way with a Rigaku device. And yes, with just a few constraints in terms of concentration, or parts per million. If there's fentanyl in that pharmacy, Rigaku analytical devices can find it in presumptive ID. There are a few cases where the fentanyl concentration is just so low, or maybe the fentanyl's on the backside of the pill, where the laser's not addressing it. I mean, those sort of things. But pharmacology, you talked about grocery stores, Jeff. Absolutely. You can test, random test some of the pharmacology coming in there. If it's in a blister pack, that's transparent. And you can see if that pharmacy is polluted with something, or it's traced or laced with something. Pharmacies use it all the time. Absolutely. First responders, law enforcement. It's chemistry, right? It's chemistry in my hands.
Well, that's there's a lot, and I think there's probably a lot more to learn. So where can people do that? Where can they find out more?
RigakuAnalyticalDevices.com. Go to our website. If you've got my name there, I'm on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. And you'll find the right links to get you to Rigaku Analytical Devices. In terms of comparison, the device is a lot less expensive than that $1.2 million combat vehicle that I had. Right? So the prices really come down a lot. You have the same or better technology, and you can actually carry it. I mean, the experts at Rigaku will give you a price quote for each one. But when you think about what you're able to do with the device, lives saved, and the quick manner in which you can do a survey, it's absolutely incredible.
That's outstanding. Thank you so much for downloading all of that to me. I'm gonna put my central brain housing group to work and try to figure some of this out, because again, this is another topic where it's frightening to think about the stuff that's out there.
Do we have any more time? Can I tell you one more story?
Super. Yep.
How much time do we have? 50 minutes.
5 minutes.
Great. I got it. Remember when you were on airborne status and you had a plane full of pay hurts? You know, okay. So in the Army, if you're on airborne status, you have to do one jump every 3 months in order to maintain proficiency. And I think back in the day, I was getting like $100 a month, which is not a lot of money until you don't get it that month. And then it's like, where's my $100, right?
Right.
So you had to do that for 3 months, and weather would get in the way, work would get in the way, staff would get in the work in the way. Sometimes you just, I don't want to be cold today. So you get to do it some other time. Anyway, when you're a pay hurt, when the Army says you're a pay hurt, you only have one more jump, or we're going to take away your $100 a month. At the end of every month, the Army used to take a plane full of paratroopers and load them up with pay hurts because they had to get the money, right? And your jump master, if you had a good jump master, it didn't matter what the wind was like on the drop zone. If he heard 5 to 10 knots, he turned around, or she turned around and said, 1 to 5 knots, stand in the door, you're going. Because if you get in the way of a pay hurt and they're $100 a month, there's something that's going to get broken. I'm just telling you. Anyway, okay, so 5 minutes. Ukraine presents an interesting environment. So Ragaku Analytical Devices, it's great at chemistry. So we have toxic industrial chemicals in Ukraine. Remember that nitric acid plant that got toasted with munitions? That's an incapacitant. It's a contact hazard. It's got a respiratory hazard. Raman spectroscopy works on this. Ukraine has a long history of manufacturing fertilizers. There's a lot of nitric acid all over. There's a couple of nuclear power plants, right? There's a lot of pharmacy. There's a lot of chemistry on the battlefield in Ukraine that hasn't been brought in, right? That we need to be able to survey and inform the troops of what they're doing and how they go about it. Now, here's one of the challenges, I think, with Ukraine, because I think it's one of the questions I always get asked. Do you think chemical weapons will be employed in Ukraine? And here's my point. My answer to that is, first of all, Ukraine presents what we call a hybrid threat that was really kind of maturing in Syria. What I mean by that is, if somebody employs chemical weapons in Ukraine, attribution is going to be nearly impossible, because to the best of my recollection, and I only read the newspaper, the combatants on the battlefield are the Ukrainians, the freedom fighters that they called in, every other Joe and Jane that wants a combat good time is flying over there and doing it. Couple of Americans I've read have been fighting in Ukraine. We have the Russian army. We have the mercenaries employed by Russia. We have prisoners from Russia. We have North Korea offered troops. Iran has supplied drones, and who else? So you have, how many people it's not Ukraine and Russia on the battlefield dueling it out. So if chemical weapons are employed, prove that I did it, and not one of the other 17 organizations that are playing, having a good time on this battlefield. If Russia does do it, here's what I would tell you. In World War I, we had about a 20% dud rate. In other words, the chemical munition did not deploy as designed. So it hit the ground, it broke, or it didn't break, but it didn't go boom. If the munitions are presented in Ukraine, and if they are weaponized munitions from whatever country, and I'm not suggesting one country or another, I'm just saying that it is likely filled that they were filled in the 80s or the 90s. And chemistry inside a metal is a caustic, literally a caustic combination. The chemistry will eat away at the metal, right? And it'll mess with the integrity of it. My point is, planners should consider that if chemical munitions are employed in Ukraine, the dud rate is going to be closer to about 30 or 35%. Here's what that means. That chemical artillery round on Main Street in Ukraine is going to break open. It's going to have a vapor, and it's going to have a liquid hazard. You're not going to have vapor sensors that'll pick it up, because the parts per million doesn't provide enough of a sample for that detector to pick it up and squawk. right? Gas, gas, gas. It just isn't there. But you don't want to parade Mrs. Smith's kindergarten class by this munition. You need something like a Rigaku analytical device to presumptive ID exactly what it is. If I know it's nerve agent, then I can barricade it. If I can't disable it and remove it to destroy it, then I can barricade it. I can contain the hazard, and I can keep the population away from it.
So knowledge is power, as always. Knowing what it is helps you to decide what's next.
You've been very tolerant at listening to me speak for 20 minutes. I appreciate it.
No, you've been tolerant with speaking to people who have to, at least in my case, take a minute to process, because it's all new. It's a new realm for me. In a backpack, that's from a truck to a backpack. That's amazing.
Yeah,
so
absolutely, and it's this is a business where you're taking care of a threat that nobody really wants to think about. We all, in other words, if we do our job very well, you don't have to consider all the possibilities that we just kind of went over. Right? Everything is good. We're gonna go on with our daily life. So,
well, thank you for thinking about that, so I can use my brain to think about other problems like what I'm going to have for lunch. So I want to thank you for being here, and thank you for doing all that you do. For the alphas out there, we're going to recap with the words that we can pronounce. I think Ashley can probably pronounce more than I can, and we're going to do that as soon as we come back from this break.
The American Legion is raising awareness about PTSD and veteran suicide by offering hope, camaraderie, and support.
Be the one to help end veteran suicide.
The goal of the American Legion's Be the One campaign is to destigmatize asking for mental health support.
Be the one to ask a veteran in your life how they're doing.
Be the one who saves one veteran.
Go to BeTheOne.org and help the American Legion end veteran suicide.
Will you be the one?
Wow, that was a lot of danger unveiled to me. I don't know if I'm going to be able to walk, touch, look at any surfaces again without being fear of being chemically altered. I don't know. Do you have any takeaways from that?
Yes, I'm horrified at everything. One of the things that he said was, if you are walking somewhere and this is part of your whole mission, and you see a puddle on the floor, never assume it's water until you test it, because it could dissolve your shoes. And I was just like, well, I will never see water the same again. I'm testing my glasses.
It's going to be tough on your runs.
Yeah.
Stop every couple steps and go, what is, and then pull out your tester.
But it is a backpack tester, as he talked about, so it'll be easy. I can run with it.
I'm glad that there's people like him out there. I'm fearful when they tell me all that they know, because now I can't unknow it. I was blissfully ignorant, and now I know that the world is even more dangerous than I already thought that it was.
We're just going to have to just resign ourselves to accomplishing nothing.
To the danger.
Leaving the house, to the danger.
Yeah. And now we're going to get into one of my favorite parts of the show. Ooh. I mean, besides when the camera first shows our faces. I love those. I love that moment. Because I can hear America collectively going, aw.
No. We are
Except for the people that only listen. Why do you only listen? You're missing all of it. Okay, we're now going to enter this. We're showing up on the range. We're locked and loaded, and it's about time for rapid fire. Pew, 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 pew. Rapid fire 1. Be the one takes center stage at California Revitalization. This is from the illustrious journalistic website, the American Legion, legion.org. Military veterans, service members, and their families in and around Merced, California, are invited to a special Veterans Awareness campaign that will include free VA claims assistance, discussions on reducing the rate of veteran suicide, and more. The event takes place from February 17th to 19th. You can still come. at the American Legion Post 83 at the Veterans Memorial Building, 939 West Main Street in Merced. Officers and staff members from national headquarters and the Department of California, along with local members, will be available throughout the 3-day event. On February 18th, American Legion Post 190 member Jeffrey Freeman and Department of California Chaplain Dave Wayland will present on the organization's Be the One initiative. The goal of Be the One is to reduce the rate of veteran suicide by reducing the stigma of mental health treatment and empowering everyone to be the one to act accordingly when the life of a veteran is at risk. They left out an important part in this story. The Jeff Daly will be in attendance and speaking. They've given me a time limit, but
3 hours.
there's very little chance that I'll be sticking to that. All right. I love when Holly has an opinion about what I say. First, she shakes her head, she puts her head in her hand, and then she says something that I can't hear. So I only read it as praise.
You should.
That's all I read it as praise. So, all right, you're getting into this game. What do you? Revitalization is a membership thing. We're trying to boost the membership in an area, and obviously you're familiar with Be the One.
Make the American Legion cool again. That's what we're trying to do. Revitalize. Throw some Miracle-Gro on it. Everybody join. I think this is great. This sounds like an awesome event. We're gonna, push the Be the One initiative, which is fantastic, and also just, including the free VA claims assistance. I mean, there's so many people that are frustrated by that process. How many things fall by the wayside because you're just like, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to I have to make 400 phone calls to get somebody to care about my tinnitus that everybody has.
It's true. I actually did put that stuff off for years because I applied for my own increase, not knowing that there's language you have to use. There's specific things they're looking for, which to me is weird because every human being is by definition different. But they have standard words that you have to use, and I got help and later on, and so I know the benefit. So go out there for the claims. Also, you can meet somebody who knows Ashley Gutermuth. So. Oh.
How nice.
I mean, she won't be there herself, but I know her. So you got that. All right. We're ready for, oh boy, alphas. If you've been around with us from the beginning, this story is going to resonate with you. We now may have a peek into the solvency of the scourge. Or is it It's scourge, right? Yes, of the scourge that is Fort Hood. Rapid fire number pew pew 2. Pew pew pew. Military police commander at Fort Hood suspended. This is from ArmyTimes.com, reporting on their own. I love that, ArmyTimes.com. The Army has suspended the commander of Fort Hood's 89th Military Police Brigade. Officials announced the suspension of Colonel Ann Meredith at the Texas installation on Monday. Stripes.com previously reported. The suspension, here's where it gets weird to me. The suspension follows the October suspension of her husband, Colonel John Meredith, formerly Holly's curses in my way. Formerly in a command position with 1st Cavalry Division. Both suspensions were amid ongoing investigations. Officials said, a company that gets suspended together stays together. That's my takeaway.
They never say why people are suspended. It's always a loss of confidence, right? But I would call this one probably just fraternization.
Colonel to colonel fraternization.
Married fraternization. I don't know what the deal is there, but that's interesting to have over a few months. But it would add up, right? In the bureaucracy, they're just like a few months later. You know what? Let's see what's going on here too.
Yeah, it's just I wonder if we'll ever know what this investigation. No, usually with officers, they get to resign and they don't get fired. And
It's well, I think if you follow maybe some of the pages where they talk about, like, people will be like, well, I knew them, and then you get out all of these, like, the telephone game of what happened, and even then, you never know. I remember this one time. This is when I really learned that the things that people say on the internet, or even that they experience, are not at all accurate. I was involved in, it was like Christmas Eve. I was in an active shooter situation, a real one, at a mall. And somebody thought that somebody was shot. They screamed, he's got a gun. And then everybody started running and just running in all these different directions. So there's a whole big thing that happened in the middle there. But when I finally made it out to the car, I went on Twitter to see, like, does anybody know what's happening? The police were there in seconds. And there were tons of people that were like, I saw him. He had a gun. He did this. It was so scary. All these people are locked up. They're holding these people hostage. Turned into this big thing. And it turns out it was just somebody had bumped a table and some glass broke. And nobody saw any of that stuff. So I don't know. I think we'll just never know unless you ever meet the Merediths and you're like, guys, I won't tell anybody.
I mean, I just want to know, and it makes sense to me because the dysfunction at that place, and I mean, the most notorious is Vanessa Guillen, but there have been, like, we used to didn't we used to talk about them almost every month, like every other episode. I was like, this place is the base that just keeps on giving for us. And I said it back a couple of years ago. I mean, it's to the point where I think they should bulldoze the place down and start over. Yeah. They seem to have issue after issue. Why does that keep cropping up at that place? I don't know. It's terrible. It might be in this investigation. I mean, you never know.
We'll never know.
We'll never know. Well, we'll find out. All right. We can also, we can pray for a solution. Wait, what? We have rapid fire number pew 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 3. Pew, pew, pew. Think about praying for a solution. This is from legiontown.org. Yes, I'm still running and I need your vote to become mayor of legiontown.org. Four Chaplain's remembrance ceremony happened. This one comes all the way from Camp Humphreys in South Korea. I don't know what OT is. Anybody? They working overtime over there in South Korea? It's probably some military thing that I just don't know off the top of my head. This is from February 3rd, 2023. Paul E. Finn Memorial Post 37 and Lewis L. Millett Post 38 conducted a joint Four Chaplains remembrance ceremony. The ceremony was held at the Four Chaplains Chapel on Camp Humphreys, South Korea. It was 80 years ago. It's been 80 years. The four Army chaplains, Methodist Church Minister George L. Fox, Reformed Rabbi Alexander D. Good, Reformed Church in America Minister Reverend Clark V. Poling, and Roman Catholic priest Father John P. Washington were aboard USAT Dorchester. Dorchester was struck by a German torpedo and sank in the North Atlantic. The four chaplains gave up their own life jackets to others and drowned after helping dozens of soldiers into lifeboats. The four chaplains were locked in arms together in prayers as their final act. 674 perished out of the 904 aboard the Dorchester. This is submitted by Don Wong. He's Department of Philippines Public Affairs Officer. Look at legiontown.org stepping up. We got professionals submitting. Thank you, Don. You're amazing. All right. Ashley, this is the month. Four Chaplains happened. We actually haven't done ours yet. Ours will be it's later in February, one of our meetings. But I've seen this ceremony multiple times at my post district only post in district. It's actually quite touching, and I think men and women in cloth. I think this is what the good ones aspire to be: selfless. They clearly must have a faith in the afterlife, if this is what they're doing. And I just think that selfless service to others, because chaplains are officers. They could have bowed their way on one of those lifeboats, but they stayed with their flock, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, what a tremendous, literally giving up their own lives, life jackets, and knowing what was going to happen. It's what a tremendous story. I don't know. Do you feel like you could do it?
What's funny? I found that in life, people will say, if I think that I would do it, I probably wouldn't. And if I say that I wouldn't, I don't think I could do it.
Yeah.
Those are the people that in the moment could. This would be a tough one. I would probably, in my inflated sense of self, think I don't need a lifeboat or a life jacket. I'll just get in the water, and contrary to stereotype, I can swim. I will get there. I will get to safety on my own.
Yeah,
I would think like that in the moment. Yep.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because
I think
I'll let you other people who need those things. Now I do think that I hope that I would. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I have a bit of a hero's complex. I've always had one. I remember hoping that my school would burn down when I was in second grade, so that I could pull a vine from a tree that was outside the window, and then grab my teacher and put her on a chair so she was comfortable, and then swing her outside of the burning building to safety. And that's where it all started.
I feel like we need to unpack several things about that story. You don't have candles or matches or anything near you right now, do you?
Not right now. No.
Okay, good.
And I never started the fire, but you know what? If I had thought about it at the time, dang it, Jeff, where were you when I was in second grade?
We don't want to talk about that. All right, we are going to move towards the end of the show. Do you have any shout outs for anyone?
I have no shout outs except to Mr. Jeff Daly of the Michigan Dailies.
Of the Michigan Dailies. Hey, I'll shout you out back. I kind of want to shout out, which we're going to talk about him at another time, but I have been fortunate the last couple of months to keep running into former guests, and Holly's over there saying Bobby, and the way that they say Bobby, who's out of the Newport, I think he's Newport, the Newport Post, and he's Iron Riders reenactor, and he actually rides those bikes from the Buffalo Soldiers. And then Trina Clayu I ran into a little bit ago. So I keep running into former guests, and it's awesome to meet them in real life for the first time. It, just like you probably have with I witnessed it. People who have met you for the first time after you're being in their TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook.
You had to pick them up after they swooned. They passed out. We had to give them some honey. Maybe a Coke.
Honey. You give them some honey?
Yeah, the sugar helps their, emotions get back into check.
But who comes up with honey in an Hey, anybody got any honey? We have so many. You
don't keep a pocket full of honey just in case people swoon? All right.
I mean, that's a different story. I may call. Never mind.
Pocket full of honey. That's going to be our band name.
Never mind. All right. Why don't you take us home, please?
Hey, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you consume podcasts. Please leave us a review and give us a big old 5-star rating, or I will haunt you in your dreams so the world knows how much you love us. If you have a guest recommendation, go to legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima and click on the Suggest a Guest link. We want to talk to your friends, your family, your loved ones, your enemies, and bring them to us.
Yes, and if you're an unmarried lady, bring yourself, because Jeff Daly, again, on Valentine's Day, looking for the love of my week. And I would be happy to dedicate my week to you so that I can join our auxiliary, and then we can we can stay married for the tax breaks and that kind of thing. But alphas, I hope you find love or enjoy the love that you already have. Please love the one you're with. Don't be a statistic. And we are going to see you again soon, because I don't know about you, but I'm ready to declare season 4, episode 146 mission complete.